Hi everyone, welcome to today's Learn with Google webinar, Introduction to Remarketing with Google Analytics. My name is Sarah Moked and I'm a product marketer here at Google. And I'm joined today by Jesse Savage, who's our product manager, and Rachel Widelek, who's our global Google Analytics lead. And we've got a really great session for you today. As some of you may be aware, today is actually the 5th webinar in our 5-part webinar series on remarketing. And if you missed any of those other webinars, no worries. You can still find those on the Learn with Google webinar site, which is the same place where you registered for this webinar. During the series, we had the opportunity to go through a bunch of key remarketing strategies that can help you succeed with your business, and also different tools that we offer here at Google. And today, of course, we're going to be talking about the remarketing tool we offer in Google Analytics. And if you're not familiar with our Learn with Google program, Learn with Google is really all about educating our users, and we really want to make the web work for you. And Google does that by helping you to win the moments that matter, enable better decisions, and constantly innovate. And Rachel and Jesse are really going to tell you about how remarketing can help you do that by reaching the right customers with the right messages and using rich insights from Google Analytics and adapting your campaigns really when you need them to reach the right people with the right messages. So before we get into the meat and the fun stuff of the actual webinar, I just need to run through a few really quick housekeeping items. We always get the question, will the webinar be recorded? Yes, indeed, we are recording it. I promise you'll receive a recording. It might take about a week until you get that email with the recording, but we'll also be doing a nice blog post that will include some follow-up Q&A, so you can look for that email with the recording in about a week. And you'll see in your console there are a bunch of little widgets at the bottom of the screen there. And you can use these different widgets to help you throughout the webinar. So the first one is that Q&A widget. You can ask questions at any time. I'll be here kind of able to respond to those. And then at the end of the session, we'll be doing some live Q&A as well. You also have a little resources widget. That's the one that looks like a little folder. And so if you click there, any of the URLs that we've mentioned during the course of the webinar, any of those links you can find right in the resources widget. So there's some links to our help center, our blog, and just some other helpful resources there. And we do encourage social sharing during the webinar. So if you want to use Google+ or Twitter, you can use the hashtag remarketing. And finally, last but not least, before you leave, please don't forget to fill out that survey. It's not just for us. We, of course, want to hear your feedback, but it also is good for you because we have the possibility to enter a drawing for a Nexus 7. So if you do fill out that survey, you'll be entered in that drawing. So please don't forget to do that. So with that, I'm now going to hand it over to Rachel Widelek. Here you go, Rachel. Please take it away.
Thanks, Sarah. Well, I'm really excited to be here today with everybody. It looks like we've got a full crowd. And I don't know if everyone else woke up as excited as me this morning because today is 12/12/12. And actually that moment has passed for the East Coast of you, but for those in Central, I'm not going to remember to point it out, but if you get a picture of noon, 12 seconds after, that would be pretty cool. Make sure that you post that. Well, unrelated to that, I want to talk about really the agenda for today. I'm going to lead you through the first few slides, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jesse. And we're going to start out really with the benefits of remarketing. Just a refresher on why is this valuable for your business? Why do we think that this is a really good thing for you guys to do? And then next we're going to jump into specifically the advantages of remarketing with Google Analytics. And as Sarah mentioned, my role here is the global Google Analytics lead. Google Analytics is such a powerful product, and really combining Google Analytics and AdWords in this manner is an incredible way to grow your business. And next we're going to talk about getting started and how it works. So Jesse's going to walk through some slides on really the nuts and bolts of how you would create lists. And we're going to finish off with some key use cases and sample lists. And we often get a lot of questions on what are the lists I should create for my business, what are other people doing. So make sure that you pay attention at the end and see what are some creative things that you can do. So without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. And so the beginning is really why should you do remarketing? Your time, many of you are doing a million different things online. You're pulled in a lot of different directions. And why is remarketing important? Well, this is a quote from ClearSearch Media, John at ClearSearch Media. And remarketing for ClearSearch Media allows them to add value back into sunk costs. It's a great way it's a great opportunity to win back those users that we've already driven to the site through our advertising campaigns. So all of us have been in the consumer's shoes. You've gone to a website, you're looking at a shirt, you're looking at some piece of technology, and you didn't actually purchase. Imagine that retailer's ability to actually get back in front of you again. And if we translate this to the real world, I often find that it's easy to put these examples in the digital world, but less so in the real world. I actually went to Walgreens last night, and I was walking down the aisles, and I saw some Sour Patch Kids. And I decided not to buy the Sour Patch Kids, although I really wanted to. And it would be a great experience for that business to get back in front of me today, potentially, as I'm still fighting that craving. And remarketing, with you can actually do that in the digital world. So you can target people who came to your website, who viewed a specific product, and get back in front of them the next day, the next hour, the next couple of days. And that's what makes remarketing so great. And it really pulls all of your advertising together in one place. And remarketing with Google Analytics is a great way to do that, and we'll show you exactly why. And so to understand exactly how remarketing works and why it's so powerful, it's helpful to go through really the nuts and bolts. So what happens is somebody comes to your website. So you go in, either you type that URL in directly, you click on an ad, and somebody lands on your website. From there, that visitor is added to your list. So if you have the code on your website, they are added to your list. When the visitor leaves, maybe they purchased from you, maybe they didn't, you can reach them once again across the display network. And the Google Display Network is massive. There are hundreds and thousands of websites, covers quite a bit of the web. So you can go ahead and reach users who once again have been to your website, who are then going and browsing other websites online. And this is how you continually can get more return visitors to your website, which then hopefully will translate to more conversions for you as a business. And the metrics here are pretty astounding. So if you think about your own conversion rate, many of you maybe it's 1%, some of you maybe it's 10%, which is quite high. But the majority of people visit a website without completing the actions that the marketer would like them to take. So all of us go to websites, we don't purchase, we don't sign up for a newsletter, we don't view a video. 96% of people do that. 70% of people actually will add something to a shopping cart and not complete that purchase. I've done it, I know, in the past week. It's the holiday season, but I want to look for the best price. I want to find really that best gift. And remarketing, once again, allows you to re-engage those users who showed interest but didn't actually commit. And there's a few, if you look at the numbers of this, we've really seen remarketing drive, number one, a lower CPA by getting back in front of users again. They're already pre-qualified to some extent. So you can drive a lower CPA, and that's mainly from a higher conversion rate. It's incredible the rates that we've seen from remarketing lists versus other lists. Versus other campaigns, rather, on the display network, because you're reaching, once again, qualified visitors who showed interest. You're already a little bit of a step ahead. And then lastly, a higher CTR. Because they're more interested, they're more familiar with you, they're more familiar with your brand, your website, and they're more likely to click. So you'll see a higher CTR, which, as all of you know, has its own benefits. So let's talk about the ways that you can strengthen your entire campaign through remarketing. The first example here, and this is that traditional purchase funnel that all of you have seen, and the beginning here is brand awareness. And remarketing, it can add value here because specifically with remarketing with GA, you can create a list for users who searched generic keywords and came to your website. Those people came to your website so they know your brand, they know your site, but they didn't actually search for your branded keywords. This was a great opportunity to use remarketing with GA to get back in front of them on the display network. And hopefully in the future they will go ahead and search your brand keywords, and you'll build your brand that way. The next one in the funnel is interested consumers. So this is really the biggest value of getting back in front of users who already came to your website and showed interest in your products. So those who viewed a specific product page, those who came to the home page, those who potentially, if you're a brick and mortar, actually viewed the map on your website, get back in front of them again. And regardless of their source, you can find them on the Google Display Network. And then lastly, people abandoning their shopping carts. We've all done this. Once again, remarketing can add a lot of value there. So let's talk specifically about remarketing with Google Analytics. So this is a quote from one of our customers abroad. The company is called Spill Games. And for them, remarketing with Google Analytics is very easy to use, and it lets them reach exactly the types of users that they want. The fact that it's integrated with Google Analytics and AdWords is very efficient, and they didn't need to train anyone on their teams on this because they were already familiar with Google AdWords and Google Analytics. I think that last point is very interesting. Unexpected for us when I saw this. I really liked that. If you're already using Google Analytics, you're going to get this product and you're going to understand its power. So really the people who can maximize this product the most are Google Analytics users. So I hope most of you or all of you are on the line right now. And the other thing I want to mention, I often do speaking events and I'll talk about my father's business, my poor father. But my parents own a very small furniture company in Michigan, and when I try to talk about my job and what's going on, they don't always get it. And I thought that this product was a good way to get my parents to understand what I do. And my father is actually now running remarketing lists with Google Analytics. The reason for that is my father does have a website. He has before and after photos, and when he posts new photos there, he wants people to know the type of work that he's doing. He wants people to know that he's doing work in the antiques industry, he's doing furniture refinishing, etc. And this is a great way to target people who have been to those pages and are familiar with his work and let them know that he's up to quite a bit of new things. So a small business example, I think it's easy for us to talk about the large company examples. We'll talk about some of those later. But keep in mind, if you're a smaller business, this product is really great for you. And there's a few high-level advantages here to remarketing with Google Analytics. The first of which, if you already use Google Analytics, all you have to do is make a one-line, one-time code change. So you do have to go ahead and do this to actually get users on your list. But if you've already tagged your website with Google Analytics, this is a much smaller effort for you. Jesse will actually go through the specifics of this later. But you can reuse your Google Analytics tag. Just make this one change, and people will be added to your lists. The next is, and I think this is one of the most important, is being able to leverage your Google Analytics data. There are over 200 dimensions and metrics. When I say dimension, I mean something like the source of that user's visit, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Google paid search, and then metrics such as bounce rate, time on site. You can combine all of those to create really rich and interesting lists. You can also build and edit lists with ease. Jesse is once again going to go through a demo later. We'll show you the user interface. If you want to take the simple route, you can seriously create a list in seconds, and we'll show you exactly how to do that. But because it's all within the Google Analytics UI, which is a fairly friendly UI, it's quite easy to build and edit your lists. The next is that you can create sophisticated lists based on visitor activity. So if you want to get a bit more sophisticated in creating your lists, you can create one such as the location is San Francisco, the operating system is Mountain Lion, they've spent 10 minutes on your website, and they viewed X, Y, and Z pages. Once again, you guys can get very sophisticated lists based on that user's visitor activity. And then lastly, the scale and the reach of the Google Display Network. Being able to find people on your website and then reach them again on that massive display network as they browse the rest of the web is the last major advantage. And so just before I hand it off to Jesse, I want to talk about some of the unique things that you can do. I've mentioned a few, but I want to point out, number one, referral source. So the ability to actually create a list based off of the source that people came from. If they came to your website from Facebook, you can go ahead and create that as a list. If they came to your website from Twitter, if they came to your website from your microblog, all of those are ways that you can create really powerful lists. I also want to point out once again customer location. I just mentioned the example San Francisco. For those of you doing local promotions, especially for the holiday season, once again a great way to target users specifically in that region and make sure that they see the relevant offers for them. Also want to point out high-value customers. The nature of this product allows you to reach users across the past few days of time. So people who have spent X amount of minutes over the past few days on your website, people who have purchased a certain amount of money with you and are really valuable customers. And that's another powerful part of this product that we're excited to introduce. And then lastly, I'll point out the sequence of visits. People who started from a display click came to your website, but then came back through your email newsletter. The ability to actually introduce order and introduce that order does matter, and you really want to reach people who you've tried to push through a specific funnel of your business. So those are a few of the examples. Jesse's going to go into all of this later, but I think that those are the most worthwhile ones. And then here I will pass it along to Jesse.
Hi, everybody. As I've been introduced, my name's Jesse Savage, and I am a product manager responsible for the remarketing functionality. And I'm really excited to be here with you today because I want to show you actually how this works with the product and get out of these slides and show you the actual working product. So in a minute here, I'm going to launch a screen share and show you the live product. Before I do that, one thing to be aware of is that the webinar software that we use will pop up a window within your browser. So make sure that if you're using a browser that's got a pop-up blocker, most of them do, that you're looking for that pop-up. Sometimes it can be blocked. One way to work around that is to turn off the pop-up blocker temporarily. Alternatively, a lot of browsers will allow you to hold down the control key on your browser and click the link in the slides that says something to the effects of launch screen share. So while you guys are working through that on your end, I am going to launch the screen share on mine. So just give me 1 second while I get that up and running. You know, as a quick reminder, now I've got the Google Analytics product up and shared. If you guys are having difficulty, as Sarah mentioned in the beginning, don't worry. This webinar is being recorded, and you can always come back and watch this part again offline. So I'm showing you the standard Google Analytics product. The place where you actually build remarketing lists is in our administrative section. So you're going to want to click our admin button up in the right-hand corner of your browser and the product. This will navigate you to a view of this website and your property in Google Analytics. And there's a tab here called Remarketing Lists. And this tab should show up for all accounts. It'll show up for admins. It currently is not showing up for non-admins, and that's something that we're looking to improve. So go ahead and click the Remarketing Lists link if you're following along with me in your own Google Analytics account. This screen that I'm now showing shows you all of the remarketing lists that you or somebody on your account has created. For those of you who are just getting started, this screen will be empty. I don't want to dwell too much on the details here. I want to get to the fun part, which is following this new remarketing lists button. So we're going to click that button, and that's really going to take us to where the magic of remarketing with Google Analytics really happens. And I'm going to show you how to create two different types of lists. I'm going to show you how to create the most basic type of list in Google Analytics, and then I'm really going to show you how to tap in and leverage the full Google Analytics data. So to get started, the real core of this functionality is the remarketing type section. And the most simple type is this all of my site visitors option. And this allows you to build a remarketing list that targets anybody who comes to your site. So to set this list up, really the only thing that you need to do is give this list a name. So I'm going to give it a name. We'll call it my first list. And at that point, you really can skip down to the bottom and save this remarketing list, and you're off and running. So when Rachel said that you can create this in just seconds, it really is true. Before moving on to a more sophisticated list, I'm going to highlight a couple of other options just so you understand all the other options that are on the screen. There's a profile drop down here at the top that really defines what data for your website the remarketing list is going to be based on. So perhaps you have a profile that filters out your internal traffic. That may be a good profile to use so that you're not advertising to your own internal users. There's a few other options here. There's membership duration. Membership duration defines how long people who match your remarketing list criteria will stay on your list. It can be much larger than 30 days. It can also be much shorter. And then the most important second criteria here is choosing which AdWords account you want to share this list with. And so you can go ahead and select one of those accounts, and then when you save, that list will be shared with this account. So I'm going to click Save here. I've already created this, so I'm going to actually click Cancel. But this 10th list is the list that I just created. So there's my first list, that's the name, and we auto define the description here as all my site visitors, depending on how you've configured your remarketing list. A couple of quick useful points here. The first is that when you first create a list, lists start out empty, and they will start to populate with users after you've saved this list and your website receives traffic from that point going forward. The other useful thing to understand is as soon as you click Save within Google Analytics, this list will now start to show up in AdWords. So within AdWords, there's the shared library, and there's also the remarketing section. And this list, called My First List, will actually show up within AdWords with that name, making it very easy to target this list to a campaign that you have in AdWords. Now I want to go back to where the magic happens here. I'm going to click the New Remarketing List button again. And I want to show you, I'm not going to cover each of the different types of remarketing lists here. One quick note I will make is the option for using goals actually will not show up if you don't have goals configured. So if you don't see that option, don't worry. If you set up goals, it'll appear for you. So we're going to choose this last option. This is the option that I'm really excited about that hopefully gets you guys excited as well. You can create a remarketing list based on visitor segments. And we're going to click this new Add New Filter button. And it'll launch a new window. There are two types of filters you can choose from. I'm not going to cover both in detail, but we've got great documentation within the product and online if you want to learn more. I'm going to choose this dimension and metric box here, this type of filter. So we're going to click that button. And this launches a screen that hopefully for those of you who are already familiar with how to create segments in our own Google Analytics reporting, this UI should feel very similar. Now, the reason why I say this is a way to really tap into the full data within Google Analytics is because of this dropdown. And this dropdown, I won't go through all of the dimensions and metrics listed here, but when Rachel said that we have over 200 different types of data you can tap into, this is what she's referring to. So I'm going to kind of scroll slowly. I'm not sure how it translates on the actual webinar, but there's lots and lots of different types of data here that you can tap into and define very precise types of audiences that you can reach. So just to demonstrate this, I'm going to choose country because I think it's kind of a simple example that's easy to follow. I've chosen country. The values here will actually auto-complete. So I'm going to choose United States here. And so now I've created a remarketing list that's not targeting everybody who's coming to my site. It's only going to target people who are from the United States. This functionality also supports logical conditions, ors, and ands. So you can really define very complex, sophisticated logic for the type of audience you want to reach. I'll give you one more quick example. We will add the complement to country, which is language here. So I'll select language. And again, I'll type in, I happen to know the language code for US English. Now the values in these boxes actually correspond with the values you see in our own native reporting. So if you're not sure what to type in here or where to get started, go check out our location or language reports. And there you'll be able to see for your own specific business which are the groups of users that you think are most valuable to target or to exclude. So now that I've created kind of a basic advanced remarketing list, I'm going to give this list a name. We'll call it US English users, and I'm going to save it. And this is pretty much the extent of the sophisticated example. After you save this, the screen will refresh, and then you pick up right where you left off with the simple example, which is you just give this list a name. It could be my second awesome list, and you go ahead and you choose an AdWords account, save it, and you're off and running. So that's really what I wanted to cover. I wanted to show how quickly and easily it is to create a very basic type of list to one that's really targeted at precisely the types of users you're trying to reach with your remarketing campaign. So at this point, I'm going to close out the screen share. I'm going to turn that off, so bear with me for a moment. And then I'm going to switch back over to the slides, and I'm going to cover a few more pieces that I think are important as we navigate setting up your first lists. So I'm going to cover how to get started, how to set things up with the tags. I want to pull back the covers a little bit and give you a better understanding of how our system is actually working under the covers. And then, as Rachel mentioned, I want to show you some of the cool data and some examples of the first types of remarketing lists that you might think about creating. Now, getting started, I don't want to bore you with the details. I know I just want to touch on some of the highlights. Make sure you update your privacy policy. Our documentation online goes into this in great detail. I'm going to show you how to update your tags and how easy it is. Linking your AdWords account, this is a really important piece. If you don't have a linked AdWords account, you can't actually create remarketing lists. So that's a very important step. Make sure that you've got admin access. You actually have to be an admin to create remarketing lists. And then the fifth and final step, which I will also touch on in the next few slides, is making sure that once you've created lists within Google Analytics, you follow up and do the most important step, which is to actually target those lists within AdWords where you're managing your actual ad campaigns. So now when I say that making the tag changes easy, I want to show you just how easy it is. This box that I'm showing in the code in red is really a snippet of our asynchronous tracking code. And the part that you need to change to support remarketing with analytics is just the part in red. And you're going to change that part in red to the part in green. So really, in under 30 characters or so, you can very quickly support this great new functionality. And it's important to point out that even if you or other folks on your team have made customizations to your tags, this change is 100% compatible with any of those changes that you've made. It's also worth noting that while this functionality is still new, it's already in use by thousands of customers. We're seeing them have great success with this functionality. So please test this out on your own site, and hopefully you'll see the same results that we're seeing as well. Another exciting point that I want to just emphasize is that this tag change is actually going to be the basis for some exciting new functionality that we haven't launched yet. So by making this investment now, you'll be able to inherit a lot of great new functionality that's coming down the roadmap as well. And again, this is all covered in the Help Center. There's a link here on the slides, and then Sarah mentioned how you can get that via the widgets. Now, before we fully move on from the tag subject, one thing that I want to cover is if you don't make the tagging changes, you can actually still create lists within Google Analytics. But the problem is if you don't retag, those lists will be created, but they will remain empty. And when they remain empty, that means that your ad campaigns within AdWords will not actually run. So it's really important to make those tagging changes to have an effective setup. And one of the things that makes a setup on the tagging side even easier is for you to consider a brand new product that we've launched in the last quarter or so, which is called Google Tag Manager. And I'm super excited about Google Tag Manager. I think it really simplifies your ability to manage all of these tags you have on your website. What's wonderful about it is once you have it set up, you can really push changes, tag changes like I'm talking about today, all through the ease of a UI that's got a lot of features that make it easy to manage that within your organization. So I really encourage you to go read up, follow these links, watch the webinar that we have on Google Tag Manager to understand what those capabilities are. And even though this is a one-line, one-time tag change, this may be a good opportunity for you to consider adopting this great new product. Now, that fifth getting started point, setting up and targeting your lists in AdWords, I'm not going to walk through that in great detail, but I do want to take a moment to show you how to make that happen. When you're in the Google when you're in the AdWords interface, that's the screen I'm showing here, you'll click through to the Campaigns tab. And within the Campaigns tab, there's a Display Network tab that you'll also follow. And within that tab, you can actually change your display targeting options. And it's within those options where you're able to access remarketing and target your existing Google Analytics remarketing lists to either an existing campaign that you've set up or to create a new campaign that you've set up. So, just creating the lists in Analytics is really just a first step. You really need to target them to an actual campaign for those to run and for you to take full advantage of this functionality. Now, before I fully move on from the AdWords subject, I also want to touch on a couple of other key points. While it's important to define the right audience within Google Analytics, it's also important to consider a few other pieces. One piece is, think about the budget for your campaign and think about the type of bid strategy you want to implement. We've got a lot of great online documentation material, education, and webinars on the AdWords side that can really help you think through that type of budgeting decision. And probably the most important piece that I'm really excited about is because you are targeting a very specific type of audience, you can also tailor the type of ad, the actual display creative, the banner that you're showing your customers to that specific audience. So as an example, if you build a remarketing list that's geared towards the audience that saw a specific product on your website, that's a great opportunity to actually incorporate an image of that product in the ad you show those users. So I think there are a lot of great ways to marry the type of ads that you're showing in AdWords on the Google Display Network with the audience that you're building within Google Analytics. Okay, so now I want to transition a little bit here, and I want to help you understand how remarketing with Google Analytics actually works, how our system works, so that no matter what kind of remarketing strategy you build, you have kind of an understanding of how this is working under the covers. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I've got a simple example that I'm going to build upon, and I'm going to touch on three core principles that I think explain how our system works. So the example is, imagine you have defined a remarketing list using that UI I've demoed recently, where you target people who bought at least $100 of product within a single visit. Now, the first key principle here is that our system actually processes that definition, your remarketing list, as visits, really as hits, individual hits occur to your website. So to bring this to life, at the bottom here, I've got a single visitor on the left, and you will see a series of their visits, this individual visitor visiting your site, and you'll see when they get added to your remarketing list. So this first visit happens, and they don't spend anything with your site. Now, clearly this visit, as we process it here, they have not spent $100, so they don't get added to your list. And again, if they visit again and spend underneath that limit, $75, again, when that visit occurs and we process it, they're not going to get added to the list. Now we get a third visit where they actually do spend that $100 or more. When we process that visit when it occurs, then they get added to your remarketing list. So again, the first principle, I know it's basic, but I'm going to build upon it, is that we process the definition of your list as individual visits, really as hits occur to your website. Now let's imagine for the second principle that I tweak this example just a little bit more. Imagine you want to target not just people who spent $100 within a single visit, but say within the last 7 days of all of the interactions that they have with your website. Now the key here in understanding our system is that we're not just looking at the individual hit or even the individual visit. We have a visitor-based system. So we're really looking at that visitor's last 7 days of interactions with your site when we're evaluating your remarketing list definition. So to bring this to life again, let's take a look at the bottom example again. We've got a single visitor. They come to your site. They spend $25. Again, when that visit happens, we're going to process this visit. Only this time, we're really looking at the last 7 days of their interactions. Now, in this case, there are no previous visits. So the visitor their total is still $25. But if they come a second time in the visit and they spend $50, this time, imagine that the prior visit actually overlaps with this visit in the last 7 days. Now, when we look at this visitor, we're not just seeing that this visitor spent $50. We're actually seeing that this visitor spent $75 over the last 7 days of interactions. So now when a third visit occurs and they spend $50, again, when we look at this visitor, not just the individual hit or the individual visit, when we process this visit, we will see that this visitor actually spent $100 over the last 7 days of interactions with your website. So this is a really key principle in terms of understanding our system, that we're not just looking at hits and visits, we're actually looking at visitors. And we think this is a real unique power and capability that makes us unique and interesting within the marketplace. Now I'm going to touch on the last principle that has some unexpected results, and I'm going to walk you through those unexpected results and then give you tools on how to solve this. So now we take our example that we've been building on, and let's tweak it one final time, which is instead of targeting people who spent at least $100, imagine that we also want to target them only if they have spent less than $200 in the last 7 days of their interactions. Now again, we'll return down to our single visitor here, and we'll look at an individual visit. When this visit occurs, we process that visit. We look at the last 7 days of interactions. In this case, they've spent $50, so it's not meeting that minimum $100 threshold. Now when this second visit occurs for $100, now when we process this visit, again, like in the last example, we're actually seeing that the prior visit overlapped, and so this visitor has spent $150, and that falls in this sweet spot for the definition that you've defined, which is between $100 and $200. So at this point, they get added to the list. Now the interesting part is when this third visit occurs. When this third visit occurs and they spend $175 in that visit, when we process that visit, imagine it's overlapping with the prior visit. When we look at that visitor, they've spent $275. So now they no longer qualify for the definition that you've defined. But here's the catch. The catch is that while this third visit no longer qualifies for the type of audience that you want to reach, this visitor has actually already been added to the list in the prior visit. And this third principle is that when a visitor gets added to a list, they're never removed from a list. So you need tools to essentially future-proof your remarketing strategy so that even if you're targeting criteria for the characteristic of a visitor, that characteristic may change in the future, maybe a day from now, maybe a week, or maybe a month or more from now. And how do you make sure that you target exactly the type of audience you intend? So the answer is a really powerful concept in AdWords called custom combination lists. What custom combination lists allow you to do is add and subtract lists from one another to create kind of a parent list. So to solve the previous example, you're still going to create two different lists in Google Analytics. You're going to create a list of people who've spent at least $100, but you're also going to create a list of people who spent more than $200. So no matter what they do a week or a month from now, if they spend more than $200, this list will define those people as people you want to remove from your remarketing campaign and strategy. And after you've created the two lists within Google Analytics, you're going to go create this custom combination in AdWords. You will give it a name. The custom combination functionality within AdWords makes it very easy for you to select the lists that you've created in Google Analytics. It allows you to define whether you're adding lists together or whether you're subtracting them the way we are in this example. So custom combination lists within AdWords are super powerful functionality, and really no matter the type of remarketing strategy that you're building, I highly encourage you to familiarize yourself with this custom combination functionality. If you want to be a ninja of Google Analytics, of our remarketing functionality, go study up on this. We've got links from our online documentation. This is really going to enable you to build very powerful, very sophisticated strategies. Now I'm going to wrap up, hopefully, and then we'll be able to turn it over to you and we can answer some questions. But before we do, I want to touch a little bit on some of the types of data that we've got in Google Analytics that you might consider when you're thinking about how you can tailor all of this information to your own business and your own business objectives. So I'm going to tackle this in a couple of different ways. I'll tackle maybe 3 or 4 use cases here, and then I'll transition into some other examples. One example is because Google Analytics knows the source of all of the traffic coming to your website, you may want to target a specific source of traffic to your site. In this example, I'm targeting people who've been referred to my business via Facebook. Now, it could just as easily be any other source coming to your site. And we have a great traffic source report within the product that will help you understand which sources are truly valuable to you or those that you might want to exclude. The next example of a use case is we also know what keywords are referring your business visitors to your site. And so you can build remarketing list strategies around our keyword dimension. And you can target both paid and search keywords here. And you can use keywords like generic keywords for people who might be early in the research phase and are just trying to understand a particular product space. You might also target brand keywords where people have kind of narrowed down to a specific brand and they might be further up in the funnel. So there are a lot of interesting ways in which to use our keyword information to refine your remarketing strategies. I'm going to quickly pop through the next two examples. We've got an operating system dimension, which allows you to target, for example, PC users different than Apple users. We also have a dimension on mobile. So perhaps you want to target just mobile users, or perhaps you want to exclude those from your optimal remarketing strategy. Now I'm going to switch gears and give you a different view. If you are a e-commerce or retail type of customer, really every stage within the funnel, the purchase funnel, is an opportunity to build a compelling, useful type of remarketing strategy. I've already touched on the searching. You know, if people are in the research phase, you can use things like our keyword dimension to build useful, interesting remarketing lists. Now you can also use things like our page dimensions to target people who viewed specific products on your site, and again, show them ads that use and incorporate those product images in the actual ads you show those users. The shopping cart phase is an interesting opportunity for you to show and reach out to people who have added something to their shopping cart but have not completed the purchase. So this is a great opportunity for you to reach out, maybe offer them a discount, get them to come back and close that transaction. And then finally, on the payment and confirmation side, that might be a great opportunity where you know they've purchased a specific product to cross-sell them with a related product that you know that they're going to find useful. Now this is really the last slide that I'm going to touch, and then hopefully we can open it up for questions and answer a few of those. And any questions that we don't get to, we'll obviously follow up on our blog. It's difficult to cover all of the possibilities of the types of remarketing strategies that you can build within Google Analytics. It's hard to cover all 200 plus different dimensions and metrics. I've covered a few of these already, targeting content or remarketing strategies on page content, targeting things on goals. Using our event tracking is a really interesting possibility. For example, you might want to target people who've interacted with your store locator. That might be an opportunity to show those people who've interacted with your store locator in-store discounts so that you can really start to connect both their online interactions with your business with your offline interactions. I've mentioned sequence filters briefly before, earlier in the slides. Sequence filters really underscore the power of our visitor-based remarketing system. And what's unique about this is that you can target people who follow a specific sequence of interactions. So maybe visitors who came to your landing page, then they navigated more deeply into your site to a product page, and then navigated further perhaps into the early parts of your shopping cart. And what's interesting about that is that those sequence of steps don't have to happen within a single session. It can actually happen over all of the interactions within the last 7 days to your website. So a lot of rich opportunities there. I've touched sources and keywords already. I think the last point here is we've got a lot of great engagement metrics, metrics around frequency and recency, visitor characteristics that alone are very interesting in trying to narrow down on more qualified, interested, engaged customers. But you can also use these as ways to refine your existing remarketing strategies. So, I'll close with these examples by saying, we really believe that your imagination is the limit here, and we're excited to help you guys build very compelling remarketing strategies. Now with that, I want to invite you guys to get out there and get started, start experimenting with the product. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah, and we'll open it up for a few questions.
Thanks so much, Jesse and Rachel. This is a really great presentation, and the audience, you guys have been really active. We've received a lot of questions, so we're going to try to get through several of them right now, and then as we've mentioned, we're going to do a follow-up blog post sometime next week that we'll try to answer some more questions, and Rachel's still furiously typing away to respond to more of you as well. One other reminder before you go, please do click on that survey widget and fill out the survey. It's your chance to win an Nexus 7 and also to tell us what you thought about today's webinar. I'm just going to switch to speakerphone right now so that I can read off some questions to Jesse. Okay, so we've got a lot of questions. I'm going to start out with one actually that I'm just going to answer myself, which is we did get a couple people who said, do I need to have an AdWords account in order to use remarketing? The answer is yes, definitely. You must have an AdWords account, and that AdWords account must be linked to your analytics account. Otherwise, you cannot use the feature. So please make sure you've got both of those. So then another question that I wanted to look at, a question from Jamie said, where do you add that tag? Do you need to have it on each page?
Yeah, so the remarketing with Google Analytics tag really leverages the same exact tag you use for Google Analytics. And the best practice that we recommend is for you to put that tag across all of the pages on your site. And then just, further plug, and that's why Google Tag Manager is a wonderful product, because it can help you make sure that you are putting those tags across all of the pages on your site.
Great, thank you. So then I have a question from Liam who wanted to know, is there any way to remarket to someone who comes to your website to buy, for example, a helmet and then ends up buying a pair of gloves instead? So maybe they came from AdWords to buy that helmet. That would be a conversion, but it's not for the thing you wanted to sell. So you couldn't exclude conversions. How would you maybe remarket to that person?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are a lot of different ways you could approach solving that specific audience you want to reach. So, the simplest strategy would be to define an individual goal within Google Analytics on people who are purchasing gloves. And you might be able to do that just by having different confirmation pages. You could perhaps use custom variables. Even event tracking might work. It's a little bit more sophisticated scenario. And I think we're really looking at improving our e-commerce functionality so that that type of scenario can be even easier for you to set up a remarketing list. So stay tuned for more later.
Great. And Justin wanted to know if this would work with mobile and tablets as well.
Yeah, so that's a great question. There are different types of mobile and tablet traffic, and it will work with one half of it. Some mobile and tablet traffic is web-based, and the Google Display Network targets people who are using web browsers that have things like cookies, so that we make sure that we're not showing users the same ads over and over again. So for people who are using mobile phones and tablets that are using a web browser, this will work great for them. For those people who are using in-app applications, this particular functionality will not work for those users, but we are exploring ways in which we could bring similar types of functionality to that audience. But we don't have anything to announce just yet, so stay tuned.
Okay, thanks. Then a question from Nico who wanted to know what's going to happen to the cookies that might have been set with the standard tracking before you switch over to using the new tags for remarketing. Is it all going to show up as new users? Are you going to lose your historical data?
Yep, that's a great question as well. So the wonderful part is that making this tag change really should not affect your standard Google Analytics cookies or the reporting data that those cookies are using. Really, we are collecting a cookie that's used by the Google Display Network. It's an additional cookie separate from the Google Analytics cookies that we use to target ads to. Now, as always, I really recommend whenever you make any type of tag change to your site that you test that out either with a isolated page or a pre-production site, and just make sure that everything looks the way that you expect before necessarily you turn it on live for your entire set of customers. That's just a general best practice, not even really specific to web analytics.
Okay, thank you. So I think we have time just for a couple more questions. I have one from Aaron who wanted to know in reference to when you were talking about the purchase value. So what variable are you using to define a person who has purchased at least $100? Is this a revenue, or how are you getting that $100 variable?
Yep, that's a great question as well. I've kind of made up the generic use case, but our e-commerce functionality, we've got goal value is one dimension that you could use, transactions, revenue. You might also use custom variables. There are a variety of, different ways to solve that same problem, and depending on the exact type of remarketing list that you're going to use, you might experiment with a couple of those and see which one works best for your business.
Okay, thanks. And then Chip wanted to know if you could give any examples for how to use remarketing if it's not an e-commerce website.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that just comes down to remarketing is a great tool for all businesses. What's required to use it is really to have a clear sense of your business objectives. So for a non-e-commerce site, you might be trying to drive, for example, newsletter signups or logins or a variety of other non-commerce based goals. And those are goals that you want to set up just generally in measuring the performance of your site and all of your advertising, never mind remarketing. Understanding what those business objectives are and then baking them into Google Analytics as goals is really going to help you overall. And then you can use that to build remarketing strategies against.
Okay, great. I'm going to take just one final question. Another reminder before you go, please do fill out that survey. So the last question comes from Jamie, who wanted to know if there's a limit to the number of remarketing lists that you can create.
That's a great question as well, and the answer is no, there's no limit. We want you to be creating lots and lots of remarketing lists and have great success with them. So please help us go and get started. We hope you love this functionality, and let us know where you'd like to see it improved. This is an area that we're really standing behind and we're excited about, and it's going to grow and get even bigger and better as time goes on.
Okay, thanks so much, Jesse and Rachel. This was a great session, and thanks to the audience members. We really appreciate your active participation. The questions that you've sent us are helpful for us to help understand what you guys are interested in, so we're going to follow up with those. Look out for that email and a blog post hopefully middle of next week with the recording as well, and hope to see you at future Learn with Google webinars. Thanks so much and have a great day.